Wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Good afternoon. Welcome to week 2 of the Yamato build. I'm cheating. I started early. Today is Sunday rather than Monday. And, you know, people think once you're retired, you've got all the time in the world. Well, you don't. You'll find that people, because they assume you have all the time in the world, will immediately start asking for favors. And you know, I'm a helpful guy. I like helping out people, especially if it involves building something. And but they want their work done on the weekend, so that kind of bites into my weekends. My weekends are no more free than anybody else's. But that's neither here nor there. It's Sunday afternoon, and we're going to get back into the Yamato, and we're going to light the engines today. Alrighty, the first thing I want to light up are these two secondary engines that go below the main engine. And what I've done so far is I've taken one of these orange chip LEDs and I just super glued a piece of backing to it. That way I can attach that flatly to the back of this insert, which feeds into there. Now the next thing I need to do is simply glue that down to that. I hope you don't mind me talking over the plotter, but I just wanted to show you the center engine. That's one tiny chip orange LED in there, and gives you that halo around the central piece. And when you stick it inside of the engine mount, it looks like that. Lovely. Alrighty, and when you wire them all together, they spell mother, but there you go. Now, the top one is never going to be as bright as the bottom one, simply because there's a big cone that is blocking the light transmission, but there you go. Now I'll hook that up to the flickering circuit on the board, and we will have wave motion engines. So now I'm going to try something I was noodling about on the wave motion gun way at the other end of the ship. Alright, let's try that again. I'm sorry, the first time I tried to film this, I had to cough and sneeze and burp at the same time. It was a symphony of bodily noises that no one should have to put up with. But here is what I've come up with for the wave motion gun. This idea was given to me by my good friend Bob, who joins us on the Amazing Scale Modelers hangouts every once in a while. Bob is a man of few words, but every single one of them is a pearl of wisdom. He knows his stuff. And this is how he suggested I tackle the problem. Take a small white light, which will be the constant on gun effect, and put that in front of... Oh, I just ran it out of focus. Sorry about that, folks. There you go. And put that in front of a 5mm bulb. And that 5mm bulb is one of those red, green, blue, flashy. It goes through the whole cycle. It gives me a nice color. It doesn't do all that cycling because it's not on long enough. This is the one that's going to do all of the pulsing, but it gives me a nice color while it's doing that. So let's trip the light fantastic here and see how she works. Now I'm not going to point this straight at the camera because the last time I did that I think I blew out the light sensor, but you'll see that light it's going to cycle through. It's ramping up, and any minute now, it goes real quick, and then it's constantly on for a second. Boom. And it swaps over to the white light. Now, I don't know why. It's got to be something in the circuit that times that, but that's on for an ungodly amount of time. Yes, I know the wave motion gun, when it was fired for a while, but this is ridiculous. So I will go on to other things while that's still doing things, and it eventually will ramp itself down and go out and be ready to be cycled through again. And then, of course, the whole thing will get put into here so that you get that effect to it. Again, trying not to shine it directly into the camera lens, but like that. Morning, friends. It is Monday. It is the first official work day of the week, even though I did work on this some yesterday. Today I want to be doing some painting. I want to do the lightening up of all these things because I've actually gotten to the point where I need to start slapping parts together. Working more on the wave motion gun. After about 3 or 4 successful test firings with the small bulb up front, it crapped out on me. I don't know whether it was a bad LED or whether I was pumping too many watts through it and it burned it out or what, but I've got it down on the 9-volt system now. And I've replaced the front bulb that was 3 mil with a bigger white 5 mil. It seems to be lasting longer. Here we're going through the firing circuit, the firing circus again to go through this thing. And it seems to be working. So I'm going to stress test it a couple more times and then I guess try to jacket it together like I did the first time and get it into a tube form. So that I can, here it goes, so it's revving up. This is nice, but the whole sequence is way too long. And then boom. And this will stay on for a week and a half, and then it eventually peters out. But at least it's working. So I need to figure out if this is going to be the one I'm going to use. Then I got to clean all of this up and get it neatened, and I don't know whether I'm going to keep the wiring that goes to this button. I'm not a big fan of this magnet wire where I don't have to use it, and I certainly don't have to use it here. I may even rewire this one to get rid of that thinner wiring because it just is more prone to break. So if I don't have to use it, I don't want to use it. Now there are places back here, I'm waiting for this to die out. There are places in the back engines where I'm using the little chip lights that come with that wiring that I don't want to disrupt. See, it's still on. This gun is blowing the heck out of whatever it's aiming at because it's continually firing for about 30 seconds, 45 seconds I think I timed it at, and there it goes. But where I don't have to use this wiring here, I do. But where I don't have to, I want to eliminate it as much as possible. So let's get some light gray out and start painting. First thing I need to do before I do that, though, in my mind, I'm already rushing through it, is I need to mask off the areas where these lights are so that I don't get any paint on them. Okay, so we're going to do some big painting today. I've got everything masked off. I've made up a mixture of my lighter gray, which is like half light gray and half sky gray. Sky gray is a good base, but the light gray actually has the blue tint to it, or the cool tint to it, that I want to use for the decking and for the hull. And what I'm going to do is start building up some light coats on all of this. I've got to be extra careful with this bit because it is attached by wires to the underside, which is being protected underneath the towel over there. So I got to make sure I'm not pinching those wires ever so much. And I need to probably take the gun off of this deck because I don't want to get the deck underneath it. So let me see how easy it's going to be to remove these guys from the decks. Alrighty, I just put a flat coat of the, a covering coat of a lighter gray, on all of the gray parts. And I'm going to let this dry in for a while before I go back and see how well I like it. It's kind of flat. I can see going back in with the smoke and darkening some areas, but generally I like it. Here's what it looks like on the side, and you can see I'm starting to pull out some panels and accentuate some lines there. It's a little bit more subtle in real life than it's showing up on my viewfinder on the camera. So, like I said, paint sometimes dry darker. So, gonna let that dry for a good while and then come back in. And probably, I might put a satin coat over that because satin coats sometimes will accentuate the colors of a blended coat underneath. And after that has had a good chance to dry, I may do that to see whether it brings out the detail that I'm looking for. But all of this stuff is drying. And like I say, once I'm done with this stuff, the assembly is not going to take all that much. It's going to be routing the wiring that's really going to take the time. So good times. We'll let this go on, and I need to run an order to the post office. Morning, kids. You see the pile is getting smaller and the parts are getting larger. That means we're putting things together finally. Today I want to install the gun, which needs to go in here, which means I need to do some final soldering, get the wiring where I want it, figure out where I want the circuit to go so that I can wire the switch and all of that kind of stuff. I may end up cutting this wire because I may want to run the switch out of a tiny hole, and I would need to lop off that button and then resolder it once this is on the base. Let's see. Gun in place. I've got as much of these pieces put together as I can. I need to light this side window. I've got a coat of satin over top of the gun deck, so it's going to be ready to be installed once I get to that point. Let's see. Well, we'll just catch you up on everything as we go. But the first thing we need to do is I need to get myself happy with where that gun is going to be in place. So let's get the soldering iron warmed up. I hadn't picked the camera up in a bit, so I figured I'd catch myself up and you with my thinking. I'm thinking about how the best way is to mount this to the base, and I'm looking at where the base is going to hit it as it's sitting. And even with that little sail in the way, if we want to open that door like that, then it needs to sit right about there. And the two pair of wires that I need to run down to this is an on-off switch and the gun firing switch. The momentary switch to fire the gun. So if I can drill a hole through the ship here and into the base there, then I can run everything I need down to the bottom here, and then run out to the two switches wherever I want to put them. Literally, I could put them anywhere on this base. I might go here and here. I don't know, but I'm going to leave myself plenty of slack to do that. So I just need to map out where those holes need to be drilled straight down through. It's starting to come together. I've got all of the niddly bits attached to the board. I've got the board in place. I've got these two jacks going out, or these quick connects going out to the gun. This is the battery compartment. These are the switch wires coming out. I need to put this to the side and mount the gun and the two side lights on those guys, the green ones there. I got to do that on the front of the ship. So let me clean the decks here and reestablish the front of the ship. Okay, before I close this up, I want to do a little bit of recording here. I've got the two bulbs for the wave motion gun in place, and I've got some epoxy putty underneath them holding it there, and I am just getting ready to pack the top side of it now to really hunker that thing down. I've got two sets of wires working their way to the back here. I've got my constant on bulbs here, which is these two guns, these side lights, which I will show you in a second, which is just a green bulb behind a white piece of board, like this one is here. Then everything goes into this next open bay, which attaches to the back half of the ship. And if I can get this area closed up, then I can put this big piece on the side. Things are coming along nicely. That was some tense lugging and tugging and squeezing things together. I have not glued this nearly as much as I want to, so it does have the telltale Bandai squeak like that. But you know, you just got into the heat of battle to the point where I don't want to open these joints up and try to put glue in them. But I am down to these two wires, which have to join to the stack here, and then I'll be able to push this whole thing down in. And this is the power, These are the two switches. One is the gun and one is the switch that turns on the battery. So I think I'm ready. Before I get too much further, I think I want to try to do some temp wiring and give it a light test just to make sure that things are still working before I button this up too much. Well, believe it or not, it's all together. Putting that top deck in was a chore and a half. Now, I'm going to go back and kind of pull some stuff apart a little bit, put a little glue in it, and push it back down, because just squeezing it together, not only does it give you the Bandai squeak, but, you know, if I could squeeze together glue, I would just feel better. I've also noticed some places where, now that everything is in one piece, I need to go back in and paint to match. Like, this is way too dark compared to the rest of the ship, but now I can blend it all together because it is all of one piece. And I want to do some of that before the last thing I'm going to end up doing is wiring this to the base, which, you know, not 100% happy I've got to do, but it certainly won't stand by itself. It's got all these little fins coming out of the bottom, so I don't want to sit it on anything that's going to snap any of those off. So it's got to be done. It's just a shame to have to do it because it's such a nice kit to pick up and zoom around. And then I think a unifying, once I do a little bit more painting, unifying coat of satin, and then I'm going to go in with the Tamiya clear, I think, and do the area where the decals need to go. Not going to try to use that gloss because of what happened on the Enterprise kit when I did that. So I'm going to try something alternate to put under the decals, and then it'll be the, I think I'm going to go with a satin over the whole thing rather than a flat, because it would give you the shiny anime look, I think, a little bit better. But, and then we'll show off all the lighting, which I have tested and it does work. I just need to, I want to wait and show it all off at one time. Okay, so I've hit a good place to shut down for the evening. I have put a simple gloss coat, and that's using the Vallejo gloss varnish, just in the area where decals are going to go. So I'll let that dry all night, and then first thing in the morning we'll hit it with decals. And then I think there's one last going over with just streaking wash in tiny places to overall accentuate some panel lines, maybe put on a little bit of space rust. And then we'll be ready to, once that's done, we'll be ready to glue this down to the base. It's still not nailed down to the base, and then wire up the switches, and we'll be good to go. But I really want to get in, like in here with black wash to bring out some of that detail. And I may put some silver scrapes on some of the guns, just on the barrel ends. I might want to blacken the barrel ends just a bit and get those ready. I just need to decide whether I'm going to glue these guns down or just keep the posability of them. They're really, it's not like I'm going to be doing a lot of that over the years, but what the hey. And then I got to pull off the masks over the windows and light it all up. Good morning, welcome back. It's Wednesday. It's decal day. I'm glad this is going to be a shortened week because really I should be done with this today. I'll put the decals on it and let those seep in and dry for a while, and then just going in with some last minute streaking and tiny detail stuff, and then a clear coat, and it'll be done. So let's start with the decals. I've got all my decaling accoutrement out, a warm bowl of water, brush for brushing down, both a toothpick and an X-Acto knife for moving around, tweezers in case I need them, instructions, and decals. Now I don't even know what these are for, and I probably won't be using a lot of those. Now the ship is base bound. It is going to be on this base, so really any decals that kind of go up underneath where you're not going to be able to see are at this point largely irrelevant. This is not glued down yet, but it eventually will be, which is kind of, it's a shame, but it's not, because this ship has got a lot of little wings and antenna and guns and all that kind of stuff that were to fall over would, you know, snap off in a heartbeat. So it's kind of good that it's going to be secured down to a base, but still you do kind of lose some of the mobility when you do that. So I'm going to put some decals down and then see what I need to do underneath and then secure it. Don't know exactly in which order those will happen, but I'm going to start by putting some of the decals down and using this handy chart to go by. Now, I built up the tiny ships. I really don't have a lot of interest in displaying those tiny ships, so you know, someday I may pull them back out and paint them. I don't know that they're ever going to be displayed with this. So, but they're there. They're there on the deck, as it were. If I get bored or if I need time to something to fill some time, I might pull the paint out and attack those. But these switches are not wired in yet, but when they are, the ship will be complete. But I can't do that until it's glued to the base. So I'm trying to get my own mental order of how things are going to go today. But let's start with putting on some decals. Okay, I've got a mess of the decals down. Most of the ones on the starboard side, and yes, that was me fumbling to try to remember which side it was, the starboard side. And I've learned one valuable lesson, and that is I need to glue this thing down, because to be able to put it dead on side, I need to be able to tilt the whole thing up so that I can look at it dead on, and I can't scooch down underneath in this chair or even out of the chair to give me the right vantage point. So what I'm going to do is get a drop of epoxy out and epoxy the base to the ship and let that set up so that I can tilt the whole thing and prop it up and be able to put the decals on. Some of them are going down. I mean, they're all going down very nicely. These are very high quality decals, but getting them wrapped around some of the multitudinous contours is a bit of a challenge. There we go. And see, now we're glued down to the base, it's much easier to tip the whole thing back, and I can get a much better perspective on putting these decals in that kind of wrap down around the bottom. So let's continue on with these. Okay, kids, we are very close to being done. We are one good final flat coat away from being done, or maybe a satin coat, I'm not quite sure. But it is all decaled. I'm going to let these decals dry overnight, finish this up in the morning. I think I may pick it at some more tonight, running some more grease, grime streaks down it, but by and large it is done, and the moment we've all been waiting for. Ba-boom. I put on the lights. There you see the tower lights are all lit, the gun lights, the lights on the sides, and the engine lights. Not as flashy, not as easy to see, but they are there nonetheless. And if you stare at them long enough, you will see the very faint flicker. Oh, good news. Ralph called me last night. Just out of the blue. He'd seen the first installment of this video, and we kind of chewed the fat over the lighting circuit and the pluses and minuses and pros and cons of it, and I think he's taken some of my criticisms to heart, and we may be seeing a new improved product out of it. But there is all of the lights now. For no further ado, it's time to hit the gun. Trying not to make sure this is not going to be blasting out the lens, or the lens. I don't want to blow out the camera, but I want you to see the flickering. That's maybe the best view there. And it should be speeding up any second now. This was one of the things we talked about, is how interminably long this thing runs. Here it comes. Any minute now. It's gonna be spectacular, I swear. There it is. And boom. Now this will run for a good long while. But see how bright that is. and then it eventually flickers out in about a minute. But there's your beauty shot right there. Yeah, you can really see how much light that's kicking out. Turn the ship that way so you can see that's kicking out a good amount of light. And then, like I say, in about a minute it'll flicker and die out. But I see a good unifying flat coat on this. I don't know, flat or satin. I'm thinking maybe that I like the satin, so I may go with that. Just a good unifying coat to bury all these decals, but I want to give them a good chance to dry before I do that. See, it's still going. It's like the Energizer Bunny of battleships. It's still going. And then you have all of these iconic green lights. And of course all of the gun barrels here are posable. And I think I'm going to do one more little round of, you take the flat black and you scorch the ends of these barrels. I think I may do that one last time. And we're still lit here. I'll try to talk to fill the void here, but there you go. Now, this is a great Bandai kit. Bandai makes good kits if you can get past the squeak. And this one did kind of have to go together in a certain way. There it goes. Boom. Finally. Okay. So that's it for today, unless I decide to put some oil streaks down the side. Alright folks, it's Thursday, and for 1 week only, it is the last work day of the week. I have put a coat of I used this. It was the Vallejo matte varnish, and I diluted it a little bit because it came out kind of thick. So I thinned that down, and I sprayed it on the bulk of the ship to knock down the glossiness of the decals, and I really think that worked nicely, particularly on the areas where I really had to gloss the background to get the decals to stick down. So I have glossed over top of those, or flatted over top of those now, and they're all set in and good. And now I'm going to do one last pass with the black, and what I want to do with that is to like put scorching on the back ends of the engines and on the ends of the gun barrels, things like that. So one more pass of that, and we will most likely be done. So it's looking pretty good, but just that last touch I think is needed. Alrighty, after I did the damaging or the scorching on the end of the barrels and back on the engine, I thought the last thing I would need to do is to take some silver on a dry brush, just some chrome silver, and just do a little dry brushing on the barrel edges, just on the tips, which makes them stand out a little bit more under all of this contrast. The tips stand out, and put some high spots and some places where the paint might have rubbed off, basically on the leading edges of things, because that's where the damage would be, like on the leading edge of the bridge here, just on this this corner here. Just a little dry brush, just a touch of a bare metal look there. And I don't know why I moved the Lazy Susan so far back, but I need to pull this a little bit farther forward so I got more room to spin. But things like that. You might see some silver on the corners right here, and just on the leading edges of things, because you very rarely back into damage. You most likely will go headlong into it, so it should be the leading edge of it. And I'm going to leave that sit for a bit and then come back to it and see how I feel about it, and to see whether or not it is truly and well done. Okay, one long last look. This is the finished Yamato. All the lights are lit. Lights in the back, which are a shame because they're kind of hard to see, but they are well worth the look. that little cupola at the back there, the little rearward observation deck. Kind of easy to miss if you don't know what you're looking for. And the forward guns. Now I'm not going to go through the entire firing sequence because, like I say, it's an interminable length, but I will go ahead and do one last startup of the firing here as it builds to its peak. This is probably the angle that you're most used to seeing, is something like that. I wish I had a star field that I could put this, that I could prop up behind this so that you get the full effect. But that's probably your money shot right there. Maybe we'll hold on it just a little longer until the white light comes. There you go. Okay. Go ahead and turn that off. Save the battery. But there you go. Week and a half build. And that's going to bring us to the end of the Yamato build. Not quite a 2-week build, maybe a week and a half, but darn if she didn't turn out nice. Now, lighting kit issues notwithstanding, I think it turned out pretty darn spiffy. So until next week, when I've got a new project lined up already, I'll be my first 3D printed, where the 3D printing, where the whole entire kit was done on a 3D printer. So that'll be fun and exciting and new to work on, because there's a whole different way you need to get the parts ready to be painted. So until then, be good to each other, and we'll see you here this very next time.